The haunted hotel. There was a grand hotel that sat atop a hill in a small town. The hotel had been open for over a century, and it had a reputation for luxury and elegance. But there was something sinister lurking within the hotel's walls. One day, a family of 4 checked into the hotel. They were excited to spend their vacation in such a beautiful place. But as the days went on, strange things began to happen. The family heard footsteps in the hallway outside their room, even though no one was there. They felt cold spots in certain areas of the room, and they heard strange whispering in the middle of the night. They tried to ignore the strange occurrences, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. One night, the family decided to investigate. They went into the hotel's basement, where they found a hidden room filled with dusty furniture and old paintings. As they looked around, they heard a voice whispering their names. They turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them in the room. They tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. They were stuck there for hours, listening to the whispering voice and feeling the cold breath on their necks. Finally, the door opened on its own, and they were able to escape. They reported their experience to the hotel staff, but they were met with skepticism. The staff claimed that the hotel was not haunted and that the family must have been imagining things. But the family knew the truth. The hotel was haunted by something malevolent, and they never returned. The abandoned asylum. There was an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. It had been closed for years after reports of mistreatment and abuse of the patients. It was said that the asylum was haunted by the ghosts of the patients who had died there. A group of friends decided to explore the abandoned asylum one night. They crept through the dark, creaky halls, feeling the weight of the asylum's history on their shoulders. As they entered a patient's room, they saw a ghostly figure sitting on the bed, staring at them with empty eyes. Suddenly, they heard a scream from down the hall. They ran towards the sound, and they found a room filled with old medical equipment and surgical tools. They noticed that the door to one of the rooms was slightly open, and they peered inside. What they saw chilled them to the bone. There was a patient strapped to a table, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. The room was filled with the stench of decay, and they could hear the sound of flies buzzing around her lifeless body. As they tried to leave the asylum, they found that the doors and windows had been locked from the outside. They were trapped inside with the ghosts of the asylum's past. They heard whispers in the darkness and footsteps echoing through the halls. They tried to find a way out, but they were lost in the labyrinthine halls of the asylum. They heard screams and moans coming from behind closed doors, and they saw the ghosts of the patients watching them from the shadows. They eventually found a way out, but they were forever changed by their experience in the abandoned asylum. They never spoke of it again, but they knew that the ghosts of the asylum would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The haunted forest. There was a dense forest on the outskirts of a small town, rumored to be haunted by the spirits of those who had died within its boundaries. The trees were twisted and gnarled, casting deep shadows that seemed to shift and move on their own. The townspeople avoided the forest at all costs, believing it to be cursed and dangerous. One night, a group of friends decided to venture into the haunted forest, determined to prove that the rumors were nothing more than superstition. They hiked through the dense underbrush, the trees looming over them like silent sentinels. They were on edge, their senses heightened by the eerie atmosphere. As they walked deeper into the forest, they heard strange noises coming from the trees around them. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and they felt a sense of dread washing over them. Suddenly, they saw a ghostly figure emerge from the shadows, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The figure chased them through the forest, its ghostly form seeming to move effortlessly through the trees. They stumbled through the underbrush, trying to outrun the ghost, but it seemed to be gaining on them with each passing moment. Finally, they came across a clearing, and they saw a dilapidated old cabin in the center of it. They rushed inside, slamming the door behind them, hoping that they had lost the ghost for good. But as they looked around the cabin, they realized that they were not alone. The cabin was filled with the ghostly apparitions of those who had died within the haunted forest, their twisted, distorted faces staring at the friends with malevolent intent. The friends tried to escape, but the cabin seemed to twist and warp around them, trapping them inside with the vengeful spirits. They saw visions of their deepest fears and regrets, and they heard the whispers of the dead echoing through the cabin. Finally, they were able to break free from the haunted forest. But they knew that the spirits would always haunt them. They warned the townspeople never to venture into the forest, for fear that they too would fall victim to the curse of the haunted forest. The doll maker. There was an old man who lived in a small town and was known for his intricate and lifelike dolls. His dolls were so realistic that many people believed they were alive. The man would never sell his dolls, instead choosing to keep them all for himself. As he grew older, the man became increasingly reclusive and strange, and rumors began to circulate about his true intentions. One day, a young girl went missing from the town, and the townspeople suspected that the old man had something to do with it. They searched his house and found a secret room filled with dolls that looked just like the missing girl. They realized that the old man was a doll maker of the most sinister kind. The townspeople burned down the old man's house, and the doll maker was never seen again. But the dolls that he had created remained, and strange things began to happen in the town. People reported seeing the dolls moving on their own, and they heard whispers coming from the dolls' mouths. Some claimed that the dolls had even attacked them in the night. One woman who had received a doll from the old man as a gift began to experience strange phenomena. She would wake up in the middle of the night to find the doll staring at her with its lifeless eyes. She heard whispers coming from the doll, and she swore that it moved on its own. One night, the woman woke up to find the doll standing at the foot of her bed. It was holding a knife, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. The doll began to move towards her, and the woman screamed for help. The townspeople arrived just in time to save the woman, but they found the doll maker's curse had taken hold. The dolls had come to life, and they were no longer content to remain inanimate objects. The town was overrun by the dolls, who had become twisted and malevolent creatures, seeking revenge on those who had destroyed their creator. The townspeople were forced to flee, leaving their homes and possessions behind. The town was never the same again, and many believed that the dolls still roamed the deserted streets, waiting for their next victim. The vanishing hitchhiker. Late one night, a driver was traveling down a dark and winding road when he saw a young woman hitchhiking by the side of the road. Feeling sorry for her, he stopped and offered her a ride. But as they drove, the woman grew increasingly silent and distant, until she vanished from the car altogether. The driver later discovered that the woman had died on that very road years ago. The haunted doll. A young girl received a beautiful porcelain doll as a gift. But she soon realized that the doll was haunted. It would move on its own, and she could hear it whispering in the middle of the night. Terrified, she tried to throw the doll away, but it always found its way back to her room. The ghostly phone call. Late one night, a woman received a phone call from her deceased husband. He spoke to her in a calm and soothing voice, telling her that he was okay and that she shouldn't worry. The woman was comforted by the call, but when she tried to call the number back the next day, she discovered that it was disconnected. The shadow in the corner. A woman was lying in bed one night when she noticed a shadow in the corner of her room. She tried to ignore it, but the shadow kept getting larger and more menacing.